agreements with you, but I do want to thank you for coming and speaking with us. 'Cause I don't agree with people trying to silence you from speaking. I don't think that's right. So thank you for coming and speaking with us. I don't really understand this idea that President Trump is anti-establishment, because I think his record shows that he's actually really establishment. So just a couple examples, like he took Barack Obama's drone strikes, which had a 90% civilian casualty rate, and it was a bunch of war crimes that Barack Obama committed with that, killed innocent civilians and everything. Trump took that and he increased Obama's drone strikes by 432%. And even his first raid as president, the raid in Yemen killed an 8-year-old American girl. And like another example, he filled his cabinet with like war hawks like John Bolton, who's never met a war he didn't like.
That's true.
Swampy people like Alexander Acosta, who he was literally the guy that like brokered the sweetheart deal for Jeffrey Epstein. So I don't get and even his voting record, like Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, they voted with him like 78% of the time. Liz Cheney voted 90%.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Let me challenge you, because there's a pretty obvious point here. If he was not anti-establishment, why does the establishment try to put him in prison for 500 years?
So,
welcome back, everybody. Welcome back, one and all, to the Dr. Nasir Shaikh Show. What's on tap for today? Well, as you can see, it's Charlie Kirk at one of those sessions here with the Live Free Tour. And he is basically being asked a question from an audience member who happens to be a Trump detractor. And as we can see, that kid, first of all, props to the kid, starting off by saying, you know what, he disagrees with Charlie, but he doesn't like the fact that Charlie gets deplatformed and conservatives are basically, banned from speaking. So kudos for him. I wouldn't consider this kid a leftist. I'd probably consider him more of a liberal. Anyways, he has some good points, like he said. Hey, we all do. I've got some questions to be asked President Trump in terms of personnel that he appointed to be on his staff, to be part of his, his team that was around him, to be in the cabinet. John Bolton, not really, but you know what? These are things that you're going to have to live with. Some executive decisions that he's going to make are going to be absolutely phenomenal people that are out there. I mean, he can only vet people so much, and he's had a team around him. And so some of those things are questionable. But I think Charlie comes back right away by saying that if President Trump, if your assertion that this young man is saying that he was establishment because he was entrenched in New York City at the time and did a lot of work, helped both Democrats and Republicans, so he's part of the establishment. Well, Charlie basically decimated that by saying what? If he's so establishment, why is the establishment trying to get rid of him? Anyways, let's continue with the rest of the video.
By the way, on this drone thing, yeah, he might have continued drone programs. Did he not try to end the Afghan war? In fact, he was the only one in the room trying to end the war in Afghanistan. And finally, if he was pro-establishment, how many new wars were started under Donald Trump?
Well, so for the establishment trying to lock him up, I do think there's legitimate crimes there. We can disagree on that, but I do agree that the establishment.
We're definitely going to disagree on that.
I do agree that the establishment it is a politically motivated thing, because I think if he decided not to run, they wouldn't be going after him. So I do think it's political, but I don't think it changes the fact that those are legitimate crimes. But I don't think the establishment is scared of his how he would govern. What the establishment hates more about Donald Trump is that whenever he's running for president, he exposes the corruption in the establishment, and he has a way of making it seem like he's not part of them while playing the game while governing. So I don't think they're so scared.
Okay, so let's talk about 3 policy issues.
Yes.
What is the establishment regime position on trade?
The establishment?
Unlimited amount of trade, foreign products coming in, free trade. What was Trump's position? Tariffs on China, right? Renegotiating NAFTA.
Fair trade.
What's the establishment position on global type contracts? For example, Paris Peace Treaty. Trump got out of it, right? Blew up all this stuff at the UN. How about another issue? Immigration. What is the regime standard position on immigration? Invade the world, invite the world, as many people as possible. Trump put a travel ban on from China and had a terror watch list ban for any country in the Middle East. So I could go position by position, not to mention, look at Trump fired Comey. Yeah, you agree with that one.
Yeah, but
what
look,
kind of
look-
establishment guy fires the head of the
but look who
FBI
he put in,
and then
though.
has to experience a 2-year investigation launched by Mueller, which was
I
complete
think
lies?
I think that investigation was BS too. But he put
Okay,
in.
well,
he
at
put in
some-
Christopher.
I'll tell you what. One thing, I think Trump should have fired, Comey immediately. Immediately. I don't think he ever expected that. And that could have just been his, naivete, thinking that, Comey, from what he thought was a stand-up guy in terms of what he did, maybe said the fact that, he released that statement, just a few days prior to the election that people say, really made a lot of people that might have been on the fence between, Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, and they were on the fence. Maybe some people, listen, that's another debate thing that we can argue upon, go back and relitigate, what did we think happened in 2016? But it's very possible that Trump was thinking, you know what, this guy did put the papers out and did, put the stuff out on Hillary Clinton, the emails. So, maybe I can trust this guy. And obviously, Comey is working in the background. Trump doesn't know what's happening there in terms of, if somebody wants to do, if somebody wants to, I wouldn't call it a coup d'etat, but if you've got an inner circle and you're the head of the freaking FBI, you don't think that you can get people that you've known, that you've been there now for years? You don't think that you know who these people are and they would be willing to do anything for you? Because they want to stay within that ring, that circle of power with you. And if you tell them to say, hey, we need to get some stuff on this president so we can do whatever we want, we can control him or we can do whatever, you don't think that's in the realm of possibility? Absolutely it is. Anyways, let's continue.
But he put in Christopher Wray. Christopher Wray right now was protecting the Biden administration.
Fair enough.
So
That's a fair point.
He puts in establishment people.
So your argument is purely on personnel. And let me just say this. Donald Trump, as Rush Limbaugh would say, selects personnel that is perplexing at times. But what I think you will agree with is that his instincts and many of his major policy actions were generationally and transformationally against the regime establishment of the last 40 years in both political parties. Whether it be war, immigration, trade, international type agreements. And understand, he was the only one that was fighting, and these people would come in and they'd lie to him. I'm going to be an FBI director with this. And he will be the first one to say, should have handled Fauci differently, should have handled Birx differently. But you know what? If you want to see Donald Trump unleashed, wait for term 2 Donald Trump to be able to go after the administrative state. Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
There's no doubt about that. Hopefully, there will be a Trump 2 presidency, but that is absolutely so true. And what Charlie said in terms of what Rush Limbaugh said, perplexing, that is true. But a lot of these things, sometimes he was bringing people that he sort of knew for some of the other positions in the cabinet, or that he might have met beforehand in private life, that were within his circle of, his sphere of influence, so to speak. And I think that's one of the things that he tried to bring. So yes, we could go down the list of some of his hires. Oh, Fauci, should he have done something? But I think once Fauci sort of got entrenched, sort of got encapsulated by the administration, I'm sure there were people around him that were saying, Mr. President, you can't fire him now. Look at all the flack you're getting for COVID. And you've hired the so-called, and remember what the media was pushing, that Fauci was the expert because he was the only one else that had previously been through a pandemic previously. And he's the head. He's the guy. You can't fire him, Mr. President. You know what the press is going to do to you? What are they doing to you now? Can you imagine what happens if you fire Fauci? And then Birx. Now, Birx he could have, not a question of surviving. He was being hit with everything, folks. Everything. And so there were, Christopher Wray for the FBI. Oh my goodness, just terrible. But these people come in, they're vetted by your staff members. You're given basically, the papers on them. You come in, you have a little bit of, I don't know what, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour, 2 hours. A guy schmoozy is going to tell you everything you can. You've got to be discerning enough to, go through the BS and find out, if this is a guy you can work with. And obviously, Christopher Wray's BS, worked. He was able to get through, got the job, and he's just been an absolute, I mean, either worse than Comey. I don't know how much worse you can get than Comey, but he's certainly right up there in terms of that as well. Those are the things that when we talk about, but then if you want to talk about Trump's accomplishments, look at what he did in terms of his foreign policy, moving the embassy in Israel, making sure in terms of where NGOs did not have access to government funds to continue and fund abortion, overseas. Look at what he did with the Iran deal, tore that up. The Paris Climate Accords tore that up. NATO forced them to put in their fair share when everybody was talking about, you can't say that to your NATO partners. You can't say that to your allies. So what if the United States is picking up the tab for everybody else? You know what? They're rich enough. They're going to the table. They can take the check. Why does the check have to be split evenly? Trump said, no, look what he did with China. No, guess what, China? You're a currency manipulator. We can't trust you. You better fix up. Look at what he did. He went to the Arab summit, welcomed with open arms with Arab, did an unbelievable speech over there, basically telling the Arabs that, listen, you got to start cleaning up this terrorist crap in your own backyards. Don't just expect us to do it. You've got to do your thing. I go on and on and on and on. Anyways, folks, thank you for taking the time to watch us here on the Dr. Nasir Shaikh Show. I've been your host. My name is Dr. Nasir. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel, like, share, and follow us. You know what to do. Look for links above and below. Check us out. Leave you with my final thought, which is, when you're right, you're right. And when you're left, you're wrong. Until next time, folks, take care and stay safe.